This morning, as a tabloid hacking scandal rages on in Britain, Rupert Murdoch is back here in the United States while his company is making plans just in case that scandal spreads across the Atlantic. Jeff Glor back in London with more this morning on the latest with this story. Jeff, good morning again.
Chris, good morning once again to you from London. As you know, Rupert Murdoch spent decades methodically building up his media empire, beginning in Australia, where he's from, moving here to Britain, and then to the U.S. Right now, he's doing everything he can to try to preserve it.
Nice left, Wendy.
Rupert Murdoch arrived back in New York last night, hoping the newspaper scandal that's consumed Britain doesn't also envelop his American interests or influence. As owner of the Wall Street Journal, the New York Post, and more, Murdoch watched his company's shares swoon when the phone hacking allegations struck, then stabilize. Now, an FBI probe is officially underway, looking into whether Murdoch employees paid investigators to hack into the voicemails of 9/11 victims. This, as the directors of News Corp begin assembling a heavyweight legal team, hiring former U.S. Attorney Mary Jo White and former Attorney General Michael Mukasey.
It is unclear at this point how much jeopardy they are potentially in because we simply don't know all the facts. They are potentially subject to prosecution under a statute called the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act in connection with any bribes that were paid in England.
Here in England, the ever-expanding list of influential figures who've either resigned, been arrested, or been forced to answer questions now includes the Prime Minister, David Cameron.
Order!
He cut short a diplomatic trip to Africa so he could say during an emergency session of Parliament that he's sorry.
You live and you learn, and believe you me, I have learnt.
He was talking about his once close, now toxic ties to a former editor of the News of the World, Andy Coulson, who Cameron hired as his communications chief even after the original phone hacking complaints came to light.
If it turns out that he knew about the hacking, then that will be a matter of huge regret, a matter of great apology.
Cameron stood up to hours of uncomfortable questions, just like Murdoch the day before.
I didn't know of it. I'm sorry.
But the head of the News Corporation, by his own estimation, has never been more vulnerable than he is now, calling this week's hearing the most humble day of his life. Now, from the beginning, some News of the World executives have suggested that other papers were also involved in hacking here. And now the High Court here in London has ordered the release, I should say, of documents that suggest that a freelance reporter who was working for the News of the World was also providing information to other papers. Chris?
Jeff, now that you've had a chance to spend a couple of days in London, what kind of impact is this story having on the country?
Well, I guess I would say that over in the U.S., we're clearly talking about it a good deal. Here, they're talking about it a great deal. It has really consumed the media landscape here. I will say, though, maybe a little bit of a lull today with no hearings scheduled behind me.
All right. Jeff Glor in London for us this morning. Jeff, good to talk with you once again, and we'll see you a little bit later on in the broadcast.